Welcome back to another week of car news. This is Let Me Drive, and I'm hoping to compile, the last week's worth of significant car news that we've heard in a couple of different ways. So, first, let's start off with Toyota. Toyota's coming out with a new supercar under the GR brand. Now, this was at an event that Toyota chairman Aikio Toyota, I hope I didn't mispronounce that. I assume Toyota is pronounced right, but his first name anyway. So they teased a new model coming out under the GR naming, but with limited other details. The last supercar that Toyota made was the Screaming LFA. That was under the Lexus brand, and it was only made from 2010 to 2012. Limited amount of units. I think there were 500 or so units made over its run. And wildly enough, each LFA engine was hand built by a single engineer, which I think is pretty cool. As you may know, the LFA at the time when it was released was a bit of a dud when it first came out, and no one was really buying them. So they kind of sat around for a little bit, and Toyota was trying to figure out different ways to get them into the hands of potential buyers, and eventually, it became a thing. But originally, they had a price tag of around $375,000 at that time. But nowadays, they're highly sought after. Last couple of transactions on Bring a Trailer were around the mid 800s for those models. So obviously they're not only rare with under 1,000 units, but they're really sought after now, and they're really fetching a much higher price than the original mark. Toyota's kind of had a bit of a supercar background. So the LFA was in the 2010. Prior to that, the last supercar before that was the beautiful 2000 GT. That had a pretty limited run as well, from 1967 to 1970. I think that's one of the most beautiful cars out there anyway, but and by today's standards, obviously not supercar numbers in terms of performance, but they fetch quite a pretty penny at the time. So how do we know that this is likely to be in the supercar range? In addition to the announcement, is they also tease this image that I'll post somewhere on this video, and you can kind of see the progression from the 2000 GT to the LFA to the next GR, which is the branding name that it's going to be under. Another announcement in the Toyota world was the introduction of Century as the super premium end of their spectrum. So this is going to be to compete with the likes of Bentley and Rolls-Royce. Historically, Lexus was the premium lineup that was made to compete with Mercedes and the BMWs and the Audis of the world, but the name Century so far Toyota has used as an actual model name. So in Japan, the Toyota Century was kind of like this premium model, which historically had even like premium materials and wool and all this sort of stuff with some really cool luxurious features, but it wasn't really available too much outside of the Japanese market. Even like diplomats and stuff in Japan would use the Century to be driven around in Japan. So anyway, it sounds like they're going to be moving that into a model series, or whatever you want to call it, of being premium to the Lexus style. So it's just going to be another step up in that capacity. And Lexus has had quite a history in being the premium allotment of the car world for Toyota. Even going back to probably one of their more notable cars is the LS 430 lineup of cars. That car historically had, when it was being designed, Toyota was known to say, like, okay engineers, you have an unlimited amount of money to design a premium car, and the LS 430 was the end result of that. And if you've had a chance to be in an LS 430 or something, you can kind of get a sense of its presence on the road, especially for that time, for its introduction. So I think most of the iconic ones were from 2001 to 2000 and I think it's 2006 is when they had kind of that model that was designed with an unlimited budget, if you will, from an R&D perspective. So anyway, so they introduced some interesting concept pictures for Century as the lineup, and this is actually one of my favorite pictures here. I'll post it beside me, but I really love kind of the novelty of the design language. It is a concept at this point, obviously, and you can imagine that most concept styles don't necessarily make it to reality in the way that the images will portray, and so it might not look like this by the time it comes out. But it's cool to see a company as conservative as Toyota kind of thinking outside the box here and see what we get as the consumer at the end of the day. Another weird thing, but they also teased a 6-wheel van, and now I know you might be thinking that 6-wheel isn't that uncommon. You have the dually pickup trucks that have the 2 rear tires and kind of that side-by-side formation, but this is actually a linear 6-wheel, so it's like it's 3 sets of tires behind one another. So I'll post another picture here just to kind of give an idea of what Toyota's teasing. But if it comes out in any way, shape, or form in this way, I think it could be a really cool deviation again from Toyota's historically conservative design language in the past. Moving on, Honda. There's a new Honda Prelude coming out, but unfortunately, it's making the news for all the wrong reasons. It seems like so. The news and the reviews have it at a 9-second 0 to 60 time. So the introduction of a Prelude with those types of numbers is quite unusual. But I will say this is an unofficial 0 to 60 second time, 0 to 60 time. But 9 seconds nowadays is just not going to cut it. The original Prelude, which was made up until 2001, that's the iconic one that you all think of when you hear Prelude. That's the iconic kind of model. Even that did 0 to 60 in 7 seconds, and that was 24 years ago now. So if it truly comes out at 9 seconds, that might be a problem for a car that's historically made to be kind of like on the sportier side of the spectrum. The slowest production cars today average 9 to 10 seconds, but we're talking like light SUVs, Nissan Versas, Chevy Traxes, Toyota CHRs, etc. That's probably not necessarily company you want to keep as a car that is considered a sports car to its community. Anyway, so we'll see how that shapes out. Obviously, they're going to have different trims and probably different offerings from a drivetrain perspective, including hybrids and so on. And so that might affect the actual end result in terms of 0 to 60 times. But I think they're going to have to make some improvements there for it to be something that people will be interested in buying. Because chances are it's not going to be the bottom end from a financial perspective, so they're going to have to make some improvements there for sure. Additionally, actually, while we're talking about the financial side of things, a report came out that the average new car costs more than $50,000 US. In Canada, the average price for a new car is around $67,000 as of 2024, while the average used car in Canada is around $36,000. These averages can be influenced by a couple of factors like the popularity of SUVs and bigger trucks and how expensive EVs have been in the last couple of years, but those are some pretty hefty numbers for the average consumer. And so you start to think about what that means for the future of cars, and it just paints a picture of the prices continuing to go up. There are a bunch of rules. I know this isn't a financial channel, but there are a bunch of rules around, or rules of thumb around car affordability, if that's something that's of interest to you. But you know, these prices are at an average car of $50,000. It's probably worthwhile to consider how it impacts you financially. But anyway, there's a couple of rules of thumb. Pick one. Pick a rule and go with it before you step into a dealership, and that'll give you some decent idea as to what you can afford and what you should kind of get into, because there's usually one of the indicators around recessions is how many car payments and car agreements kind of go into default. And so I suspect that's going to tick up over the next little while, even though we've already seen evidence that it's been starting to tick up. So just be mindful if that's a thing. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about that because, again, this isn't a financial channel, but and if anything, this is probably a channel that's going to be making financial mistakes more than being responsible in that way, but just something to think about going forward. So given that news and given kind of the price points as an average, this might be welcome news as a continuation from a topic that we talked about last week, which is the drop in EV pricing. We're continuing to see massive drops in some EVs, so obviously not across the board, and some are still in high demand and kind of in short supply, but Hummer EV dealerships across the US are advertising discounts as much as $42,000 off of sticker. And so these are massive drops. This is still fairly new and developing, so it could keep going further than that. But personally, I think it's the beginning of these types of drops, because obviously when these cool or cooler EVs started coming out, the price tags that they came with it really seemed unreasonable. It really seemed like quite an increase from your average car. And so I think the market is starting to turn on that sentiment of whether or not it's worth it in this way. So until those massive drops happen, I think a lot of the EVs are going to sit on lots until there's a bit of a correction or market adjustment to be made. Even in that regard, even Tesla Cybertruck sales are doing so poorly that they're being sold in bulk to other Elon founded or driven companies. SpaceX and XAI have bought hundreds of Cybertrucks in the last little while. I'm sure there's no accounting funny business going on there. Probably is, but just something to note that the cars that are sitting are being bought in bulk by one of his other companies. And so, you know, that's we'll see how that plays out. I don't know why XAI needs a bunch of Cybertrucks, but maybe SpaceX for moving stuff back and forth in terms of machinery. But anyway, whatever. That's not my knowledge point, so I don't really want to talk too much about that. Anyway, those are the main bits of news. If you've stuck around this long, a genuine thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be alerted when the next video comes out. I really want to set up a regular format of just kind of summarizing the last week or so's bit of car news, because I think there's a lot of interesting stuff into the car world, and I think it's a good avenue to shortlist or at least summarize some of those topic points. So if you're liking what you're hearing, feel free to subscribe, and hoping to keep bringing you some content that at least I find interesting and hopefully you find interesting as well. Yeah, see you when I see you.